My mother-in-law poured something strange into my drink while I wasn't looking. A special cocktail for my favorite son-in-law, she smiled. I thanked her, but without her noticing, I switched my glass with my wife's, who was always criticizing my career. 45 minutes later. My name is Dwayne Collins, I'm 32 years old. I'm an independent photographer living in Portland, Oregon. I built my business from scratch: weddings, wildlife, magazine shoots. The kind of work that pays the bills, if you're good. And I'm good. But for my mother-in-law Margaret, the work I did was never enough. How's your little photography hobby going? Robert would ask at family dinners, without bothering to hide his disdain. He was a corporate lawyer, the kind who measured success in square footage and stock options. Every Sunday evening at their suburban home, the same thing happened. Margaret would hover around her daughter, while Robert questioned my financial situation. My wife Cameron would squeeze my hand under the table, offering a silent apology on behalf of her family. I had just returned from a wildlife photography trip in Wyoming. I had walked through the snow to photograph bison for National Geographic. I was exhausted, but Cameron insisted we couldn't miss her mother's birthday dinner. Just a few hours, she had promised. When Margaret cornered me in the kitchen, should have listened to the knot in my stomach. As she handed me the drink, her eyes darted around the room. I made it specially for you, she said, her fingers trembling slightly. Something was wrong. But I didn't yet know how wrong things would go. The Monday after that dinner, I took the glass to an old client of mine, Daniel, who ran a toxicology lab in Seattle. Is this personal or business? He asked when I explained what I wanted. Family business, I said. He called 3 days later. Dwayne, there was benzodiazepine in the drink. It's not lethal, but it's enough to knock you out for hours and could even cause memory loss. Where did you get it? I thanked him, asked for a written report, and left his question unanswered. That evening, I told Cameron I didn't want to go to Sunday dinners for a while. I said I needed to focus on my upcoming exhibition. She was disappointed but understood. I hadn't told her about the test results yet. I needed more information first. Over the next 2 weeks, I dug deeper. It turned out Margaret had Xanax prescriptions from 3 different doctors. She'd been doubling or tripling the doses for years. There were also rumors of odd behavior at neighbor parties, accusations of stealing jewelry at the country club. Stories her family had covered up. I gathered everything and waited for the right moment. That moment came when Cameron said her mother wanted a photo for her social media profile. She specifically wanted you to take it, Cameron said, surprised. I agreed. The following Saturday, I went to their house alone. In one hand I had a camera bag, in the other a sealed envelope. Margaret was dressed up and ready. Robert was at the office. Before we start, I said quietly, I thought you should see this. I handed her the envelope containing the toxicology report and copies of the prescriptions. Her hands trembled as she read. This is nonsense, she whispered. I would never do such a thing. We both know what happened, I interrupted. What I don't know is why. Her face hardened. You're not enough for my daughter. You never will be. A man should provide security, not photos. Is drugging your daughter's husband security? I asked, keeping my voice calm. It wouldn't have hurt you, she hissed. It would have just made you sick. It would have made you miss that ridiculous exhibition you've been talking about for months. It would have shown Cameron that you can't be trusted. I took in her words. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. You're going to tell Robert what you did. Then you're going to start treating me with respect. Not because your opinion of me has changed. The alternative is Cameron finding out who her parents really are. That night, Margaret called Cameron in tears. She claimed that I had behaved inappropriately during the photo shoot, that I had been rude and threatening. When Cameron confronted me, I couldn't hide the truth anymore. I showed her everything: the lab reports, the prescriptions, even her mother's messages, which had grown increasingly hostile over the years. My mother wouldn't do something like that, Cameron kept saying, but there was no conviction in her voice. The next day, she confronted her family. I wasn't there, but when she came home, her eyes were red from crying. "My father says it's all a misunderstanding," she said in a low voice. "He says you're trying to drive a wedge between us because of your insecurity about your career." I just shook my head. This was what I had expected. "What do you think?" I asked. She didn't answer. She got into bed, turned her back to me, and lay down. I had resisted, but somehow I had fallen deeper into their trap. Now I was the villain in their story. And they had succeeded in planting seeds of doubt in the heart of the person I cared about most. For 2 weeks, Cameron barely spoke to me. She went to her family alone, returned with red eyes and an even more confused mind. I threw myself into work, spending long hours in the studio, waiting for the storm to pass. Then a package arrived for me. There was no sender, just my name written in an unfamiliar handwriting on the lid. Inside was a USB drive and a note: "You need to see this." Signed, Vanessa, Owen's wife. The USB drive contained video files from the security cameras at Robert and Margaret's house. The timestamps showed the evening of the dinner party. In the kitchen, Margaret was clearly adding something to a drink. Then my attempt to take the glasses. Then Robert drinking the glass with the medication in it. But there was more. Footage taken after we left. Margaret was yelling at Robert, accusing him of drinking the wrong glass. Robert yelled back at her, "This isn't the first time you've done this." I watched the footage 3 times. I saw not only Margaret's guilt, but a pattern. Robert was aware of everything too. The next file was 2 days later. Margaret and Robert were arguing about me in the living room. "He knows what he did," said Robert. "So what?" said Margaret coldly. "He says it, I deny it. Cameron would never choose him over her family. And if she does, then she's not the daughter I raised." "Don't worry," he continued. "I've already started talking to her about marriage issues, planting seeds in her mind. By the time I'm done, she'll file for divorce and think it was her own idea." My knees trembling, I closed the laptop. It wasn't just about me anymore. This was a calculated plan to control Cameron's life. To isolate her from anyone who didn't fit into their vision. And they'd been doing it for years. I called Vanessa immediately. "Why did you send this to me?" I asked. "Because they did the same thing to me when I married Owen," she said quietly. "They tried to separate us for 2 years. They told him I wasn't good enough. They almost succeeded. Why didn't you tell us?" "Owen doesn't know," she confessed. "He has an almost worshipful admiration for his father and believes everything he says. I tried to tell him, but he looks at me like I'm paranoid. I couldn't stand by and watch them do the same thing to someone else." The next day, I received a message from Robert: "We need to talk. Man to man. Without our wives." I met him at the country club. He was waiting for me in a private room, holding a bourbon glass. "Dwayne," he began, "families are complicated. My wife. She can be difficult, overly protective. But her intentions are good. Is drugging someone good intentions?" I asked. He waved his hand dismissively. "Misunderstanding. Margaret takes medication for anxiety. She might have mixed up the glasses. I have the security footage, Robert." His face hardened instantly, taking on a cold, calculating expression. "What do you want? Money? Is that it?" "I already knew you married Cameron for her money. All I want is for you to leave us alone," I said. "Stop trying to convince Cameron that she's not good enough for me. Stop meddling in our marriage." Robert leaned forward. Do you think this is the first time we've dealt with someone like you? There are always people who try to take advantage of our family." Then he laughed. "Cameron will come home. She always does. Go ask her about Thomas. Ask her about her fiancé before you." I froze. "What are you saying? Cameron was engaged before she met you. He was a good man. A doctor. But we didn't like his past. It took us 6 months to convince her. In the end, he left, came home, and cried in his father's arms." A big smile spread across his face. "History repeats itself, son." On the way home, I called Bethany, Cameron's college roommate. "Do you remember Thomas?" I asked. "Oh my God," she said. "He was perfect for her. But her family. They convinced her that Thomas had cheated. They fabricated evidence. Thomas tried to explain the truth, but by then Cameron no longer trusted him. The picture was now clear. It wasn't just about me. It was about control, total control over Cameron's life. And they'd done it before. I didn't confront Cameron right away. Instead, I started gathering all the evidence. I reached out to Thomas first. He was reluctant at first, but once I explained the situation, he sent me his old emails, proof of how their relationship had been systematically sabotaged. Then I reached out to Cameron's other ex-boyfriends, the old friends who had suddenly disappeared from her life. A pattern emerged. Everyone who supported Cameron's independence had been pushed out of her life over time. Vanessa provided new security footage of clips where Robert and Margaret discussed their plans regarding us. "If they divorce, well, bring her back home," Robert said in one. "She'll work at the foundation, meet suitable men." I compiled all the evidence onto a single disc. Then I invited Owen and Vanessa to dinner without telling Cameron. After dessert, I connected my laptop to the TV. "There's something you both need to see," I said. We watched the footage together for the next hour. Cameron sat motionless, her face as white as a sheet. Owen kept shaking his head, muttering, "This can't be my family." When it was over, Cameron turned to me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you needed to see it with your own eyes," I said quietly. A week later, Robert invited me again. This time to his house. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offering me one with a practiced smile on his face. "Dwayne," he said softly, "I've been thinking. You're a talented man. Ambitious. Capable. There's no need for hostility between us. I could bring you into my company as a partner. The salary would be very high." I took the glass but didn't drink. "Why would you do that?" "I'm already part of the family." "Because I respect how you handled the difficult situation," he said. "You protected my daughter but didn't back down. That's what a real man does." I put the glass down on the table, untouched. "I appreciate the offer. But my answer is no." His smile faltered. "Dwayne, be reasonable. This is an olive branch. A way forward." "No," I said firmly. "This is just another attempt to control me. You can't buy me, Robert. And you can't accept that Cameron loves me for who I am." His mask fell. The warmth disappeared from his face. "Don't be foolish," he hissed. "Everyone has a price." I stood up. "That's where you're wrong. And that's why you'll never understand your daughter." When I returned to the dining room, Margaret was showing Cameron old photo albums. "Look at these," she murmured. "How happy you looked when you were living in this house." Cameron met my gaze. She could tell something was wrong from the expression on my face. She stood up. "Mom, Dad," she said in a firm voice. "There's something I need to tell you. Dwayne and I are expecting a baby. I'm 3 months pregnant." The shock on their faces was real. Margaret was the first to recover, she hugged her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Robert came over more slowly, his expression unreadable. "Congratulations," he said in a harsh voice. "Thank you," I replied. Then I leaned in close and whispered in a tone only he could hear. "This child will never be a pawn in your games. I promise you that." His face hardened further. But he gave a small nod. He understood. 3 weeks later, an official letter arrived from Robert's lawyer. Inside were the deed to the house we were renting and the documents for a trust fund established for our unborn child. No note, no conditions, no terms. Just the transfer of ownership. This was not an apology. Robert was not the type to apologize. But it was an acceptance. Perhaps the only acceptance he could offer. We had one. That summer, our daughter was born. We named her after my grandmother, Eliza. When Margaret and Robert came to the hospital, they brought gifts but maintained a respectful distance. They smiled at the baby, took photos, and left without offering parenting advice or financial guidance. Months passed. Our relationship with them returned to normal. They never apologized for what they had done, but they also stopped trying to control Cameron's life. Or belittling my career. One evening, while I was editing photos in my studio, Cameron walked in with Eliza in her arms. "My mom called," she said. "She wants us to come for Christmas." I looked up. "What do you want to do?" "I think we should go," she said carefully. "But with conditions. Well, stay at a hotel, not their house. Well, leave whenever we want. And Eliza will never be left alone with them." I nodded. "That makes sense." She sat down next to me, gently rocking the baby. "You know," she said. "Back then, success meant making my family happy. Getting their approval. Meeting their expectations. But now." She looked down at our daughter, then at me. "Now I know that success is making choices I can be proud of. Standing by the people I love." 2 weeks before Christmas, a large envelope arrived from Robert. Inside was a glossy brochure of his company's annual report. My photographs were everywhere: landscapes, portraits, architectural shots. Work I had done on my own terms, without his interference. He had added a short note: "I hired the best photographer I know. I thought you might want a copy." This was neither an apology nor a reconciliation. It was something else. Perhaps respect. Perhaps the acceptance of new boundaries. That spring, I opened my own gallery in downtown Asheville. Cameron was by my side at the opening night, holding Eliza in her arms. My family flew in from Oregon. Friends and clients filled the gallery, admiring the photos I'd taken over the years. Robert and Margaret also came. They didn't stay long that night. Margaret held Eliza for a moment under Cameron's watchful gaze. Robert shook my hand, nodded his head in sincere approval of the photographs, and left without offering a single piece of advice about my work. As we closed the gallery that night, Cameron asked, "Do you think they've changed?" I thought long and hard. No. But they've accepted that they can't change us anymore. And sometimes, that's enough. That night, as we sat on our porch, the stars rising over the mountains, Eliza sleeping peacefully above us, I realized for the first time in my life. I hadn't won by playing Robert and Margaret's game. I had won by not playing it at all. By standing firmly on my own 2 feet. By protecting what mattered. By building my life according to my own definition of success. Not through intrigue or manipulation. Through honesty and quiet determination. And in the end, that was the most satisfying revenge. Living a good life on my own terms, with the family I love by my side. Dwayne, this is my story. Now smile for the camera.